Welcome everybody to this afternoon's discussion on mine design, how objectivity and innovation leads to world-class projects. Mine design is one of those stages in a project where everything counts. If you get it right, you're left with a safe, producing and financially sound project. Whereas if you get it wrong, you're locked into years of headaches and potentially billions in overrun. The question of how do we separate what is good on paper from what is practical and good in the field is the question we're going to be asking today, as well as how do we make sure that innovation adds value and not just adds risk. To answer those questions, I'd like to say hello to Craig Bradshaw, Managing Director of EQ Resources, Jacinta Fawcett, she leads project controls at BHP, Eddy Zhang, mining engineer at Ernest Evolution Mine, Dr. Richard Taylor, senior advisor for GERAF, and Sulaiman Albazie, business development director of Rawaf Consulting from Saudi Arabia. Thank you. I'm going to pull this over so I can see everybody. Craig, you first. You've seen projects across multiple commodities and multiple jurisdictions from Australia to, we were speaking earlier, Vietnam and back to Australia and everything in between. From your experience, what separates world-class design from one that's just good enough?
I think one of the challenges is how you define world-class, right? But in my book, world-class means that it's been de-risked, that it's been operated beyond just pilot scale, and from a scale-up perspective, I think particularly as we go into critical and strategic minerals, you're processing exotic minerals, you're processing materials that require different processes, they'd require different materials of selection. So ideally you want to see that the the science or the processes you're using have been operated in real scale in other operations, and that the design takes into account that in your unique setup and process. And so world class should be de-risked. It should have multiple plan Bs and Cs in place in terms of as you go from design to operation, commissioning, or development, commissioning, and then commercial operations, that the challenges you're going to see have been identified and solutions have already been considered in terms of working through that.
Thanks. Jacinta, project delivery and commissioning, how do you keep early design decisions objective when costs and schedule present pressures are very high?
Thanks. Let's expand this into the reality of what we face today, where traditional schedule, cost and quality constraints are omnipresent and include workforce engagement, capabilities and retention of them, regulatory and social expectations. When we look at the raw face of this, we see designs making suboptimal trade-offs to support a pressure that's, whilst present, is perceived. Unless there is a fundamental change in expectations, that the constraints of delivering, including time, cost and society, are considered and reflected in design. Is design considered brilliant if we deliver it late, or if we've missed a commodity cycle, or labour engagements? There is a really good Venn diagram that explains this and should be considered in what's good and how good is actually shown. If we turn this back into the teams, what we see is where teams can articulate and capture the essence of why, and translates this into meaningful, digestible information that when spoken to, valued and understood, we can see that the design, execution and operational teams are working in a diverse space where it is not to be forced that it is looking at in understanding diversity in thought and experience rather than just seeking content.
Eddy, you work directly with the mine design and schedule at Ernest Henry. What does objectivity look like on a daily basis, specifically in the short-term planning and drill and blast?
Hello?
Hi.
I think in the drill and blast space, objectivity is really just getting the right information and the right amount of information. So we put a lot of emphasis on our survey CMSs to ensure we have the right void ratios when we do our firings. We make sure we get our drilling returns and the information and feedback from our operators. And that allows the engineering team to make an informed and correct decision when you have all that information available. And I think that leads to an optimal outcome in the short term in drill and blast space, is just getting all that information and it will allow you to make a good objective decision.
Richard, from an investor standpoint, how do you judge whether a design is robust enough to deserve funding, and what are some of the red flags you look for?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. We are the Global Energy Resources Alpha Fund, and we're really seeking for alpha. So what's going to set us apart, what is going to set a project apart, that means there's value left on the table. So we look at two real key things within our value investing strategy. So it's the team, it's the people, it's a history of developing projects and taking them from I guess an idea, exploration through to production and development. Often they're founder-led. People have real credibility in that space, and that's key for alpha for us. We also look at things like the asset itself. It's got to be in the right location. It's got to be a tier one capable asset. NPV to CapEx has to be really strong. And that's really key to where we see our value investment space. We like a number of commodities. We like base metals. We like industrial space. We like precious metals. We like energy. We see assets in those places and really good management teams that can leave value in place for us to be able to invest in. So we're a unlisted fund that invests in listed equities, and we're looking at that second half of the Lazon curve. So markets typically trade down good management teams with good assets before they enter production, because they can't discriminate between real developers and people who are looking to sell their project cheap. And so we look for that villa value space that we see as a gap in the market for good growth projects. And Michelle Mamet out of Brisbane, Lou Rosman, deep expertise in this space, advising and running the fund out of Brisbane.
Sulaiman, from a contractor and financing perspective, what makes a design, a project design, credible enough to win backing and attract strong partners?
For sure, the credibility begins with clarity, and a design must demonstrate not just technical soundness, but commercial realism. Realistic and CapEx, clear risk allocation, and transparent constructability. And at Rawaf here, we assist aerial design through the three stages or three filters. First one, the feasibility, whether the design can be built with the local capabilities and supply chains. The second one is financiability, whether the assumptions are bankable and cash flow aligned. And also the third one is flexibility, whether the design can be adapted to market or regulatory shifts. When a project shows a discipline in those three areas, partners and financiers engaged competently.
We've capacity, capability, capital.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also the feasibility for sure for that design.
We've heard of from the perspective of operations, delivery, investment, and contracting. I'd like to test this idea, the idea of objectivity versus pressure. I know that's where we all face quite a lot. Craig, on your side, how do you remove bias from mine design choices, specifically when stakeholders strongly prefer one method over another? And adding to that, maybe they might want you to have one particular contractor over another contractor.
Yeah, I mean, very good question.
Throw a curveball in there.
No, look, ultimately the job of management is to manage stakeholder expectations while also delivering on the objectives of the organisation. And ultimately that's what the managing director, executive management, and the board get paid to do. Ultimately, where there's a conflict, you've got to focus as an executive in terms of delivery. What is going to deliver your project within budget, on time, and deliver market expectations in terms of product and quality and price. And ultimately, you will have a reference point in terms of what you need to do that, and you can't compromise in terms of bringing in contractors that a stakeholder or a shareholder may prefer over others if it's going to compromise any of those other deliverables, right? Because at the end of the day, the executive management will be held accountable for the outcome and not necessarily the shareholder. And if the shareholder may not be popular, but if the shareholder wants to have active decisions in terms of those selections, then the shareholder should be the executive and running the project themselves, as opposed to employing professional management.
Fair enough. Jacinta, can you share us examples of when objective testing overturned the preferred options and how they played out?
Sure. So I feel like I've always started with the end in mind. So the operational state that you need to be in. Objective test work can sometimes trump your preferred option in that case. There might be a need to fix a metallurgical issue that meets certain timeframes or government restrictions, or product requirements that means the test work may identify a preferable option that reaches that state quicker. That then becomes the preferred option over what you originally thought. Some of the best examples I can think of have been ones where we've determined that processing actually isn't even viable for some mines, just based on the grade, and that it's just not a profitable solution. Therefore, another investment option is a better alternative.
Yeah. Eddy, how do you, under production pressures, how do you balance the instincts of and your experience against sticking with the objective plan?
Yep, so when the plan is up to the short-term horizon, it's already been through the medium-term team and the long-term team. Usually they have a production target and also a lot of strategic milestones that you need to hit to enable those targets. But they don't have that level of intricacy that you have in the day-to-day operations. So how you balance instinct and experience is that you can optimize the plan operationally, make it more practical, but you need to keep in mind your milestones and what critical path enablers you have. So it doesn't matter how you get there. What matters is that you get there at the right time, and that's how you balance, I guess, experience and the plan.
Yeah. Richard, you spoke about red flags like weak management teams or unrealistic assumptions. How important is project ownership and team strength in making design choices credible?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. There are a lot of management teams that just will never make the leap from either a startup in other spaces or an explorer that will make it to a producer over time. We look particularly at the willingness to be able to let go the people that got you to that point and bring in the expertise that you need to become a producer in that space. So, there are particularly, you're very heavy on the geology side during the exploration piece. Yeah. You need to be moving to that development production expertise and have the skills, or at least bringing in the skills to be able to make that jump. And it's rare. A rare few companies that be able to make that leap from explorer to producer, except when you have very strong tailwinds behind you from an asset perspective. We also look at capital structure. You can have the best people in the world, you have the best asset there. If you've got the wrong shareholders and supporters who are not going to be able to get you across the line, we want to see the capital structure backing management. We want to see founders with real skin in the game. We want to see institutions that are there for the long term, not being able to ramp up a project. You can see probably a number of companies at this point that have run feasibility studies in-house, pushing the envelopes in relation to what contingency and realistic numbers look like. And maybe they'll get taken out, but they're not actually there looking at getting the independent advice that they need throughout the process to be able to get something that's robust up and work through that development challenge. It's a tough road. I mean, they're discounted. That's where the opportunity lies. That's where alpha sits for us.
Yeah, and feasibilities aren't cheap, so to do it in-house or to get an expert involved, there's a cost risk there, but there's a much bigger cost risk later on. If you haven't.
You'll pay for it.
You'll pay
later
for it
on if
either
you
way,
don't.
yeah.
If you don't get bought out, you're going to be stuck in netherworld for a while.
Limbo for a while, yeah. Sulaiman, when you've evaluated projects in Saudi Arabia, what signal reassures you that the design has been developed objectively rather than optimistically, like we've just spoken about now?
Yes, sure. We look for the evidence actually, and the design was data-driven. Also, the objective design shows some criteria, which is the third-party validation for sure, and also the resource for models and the cost estimation, also the transparent and sustainability, and also showing the economics response. Also independent for the risk, for sure, reviews and covering all logistic and procurement for the local compliance. Also for the stakeholder realism, where the timeline and the productivity assumption reflect on the ground to be sure that will be implemented. And also for the Saudi Arabia, since we have the Vision 2030, bringing the new player to the market, especially in the mining, which is they have to have the clear image about that to proceed with the valid of the design.
And like as you say, cost estimate is key, because if you've got a decent design, that design will stay for years, whereas the costs are going to change every 6 months or so.
Yes, that's correct.
Quite important that, yeah. Let's bring innovation into the picture, because tools and ideas we apply in design can completely change the outcomes. Jacinta, can you talk us through how you understand and nurture the initiatives and ideas that come during the project lifecycle to ensure they remain consistent and built upon?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, it comes up quite often, and I'm sure everyone here feels the same. When we consider innovation, yesterday's thoughts become today's common practice, be it AI, IoT, ion exchange, or even modularization. So to answer that, we actually need to dive into the teams where the work actually happens. So what we see is this incredible shift in thought through diversity. It's to understand the impacts of organisational change and designing and working in the system, not in a separate system. So if we think about this in an abstract form, innovation is often seen at the water cooler, or after hours at the pub, or at a night where we've got team days, or wrestling at 11 o'clock on shift. For me, it's usually in the shower or when I go swimming. The trick is less about the social collusions of the team, but more about capturing the words not spoken in the quiet voices, or in the rooms where the people who don't feel confident enough to speak up and show leadership, the leadership actually amplifies the voices for them, building on that single thought to capture and shift and overcome the technical challenges. Some of the examples I've seen of this over my career have been graduates who don't quite have the voice to speak up, and with the right tools and coaching can become leaders and often go on to do fantastic things where they wouldn't have if they weren't given the opportunities.
Yeah, not just graduates. So the previous panel discussion was a CAS system that was developed for the operators, and they got the operators involved in the actual development design of it. It was with Glencore, and I forget the name of the company, but they were great and I loved them.
100%. We actually use that with our boss system at BHP for that exact reason.
Yeah. Eddy, you've been looking at the AI generative designs and short-term scheduling. This excites me quite a bit. How realistic is AI in supporting objective decision makings on the site today?
Unfortunately, I don't think it's at that level of maturity yet. In the short-term space, things change a lot and they change quickly, and it's not at that level where it can produce, I guess, a short-term plan. I know of sites that use an algorithm, so it's not necessarily AI, to do their short-term planning, but what happened there was the plans that were produced weren't operationally feasible, so they've kind of gradually stepped away from that and gone back to having a person do the plan. Where see AI having low-hanging fruit in the short-term space is probably in drill and blast. A lot of the parameters are set, your toe spacings and ring burdens and what products you use. So at its core, like drill and blast is a geometry exercise. So I think that's where we'll see AI adoption in the short-term space first.
Yeah, and anything on medium and long term?
There's a lot of products that a lot of the mining software companies, especially the scheduling companies, have developed. So I think they're gradually rolling out that to market in the near future. A lot of exciting, I guess, new developments where you can run long-term schedules out to the mine life in just like a click of a button. And you can run different scenarios, put in different constraints, and that can drive, I guess, your strategic direction.
Richard, you've led AI-powered exploration venture. In your view, how should AI be used in the mine design, and what are the risks of over-reliance?
Yeah, AI is a term that's probably overused at the moment, really overused, and the expectations of what it can deliver are very high from these large language models, which are basically adjacency of words, and it gives you this false impression that there's been a massive leap in this area. So AI in its box, in its place, has significant advantages that we can latch onto. There have been advantages in brute force processing, so being able to run lots and lots of iterations very quickly with advances in data centers and others make it useful. So I see three areas where it's useful. So the ideation process, that brainstorming component, we all work in silos at different points. It can bring in new ideas effectively and being able to draw from different sources. Optimization, which is back to the algorithm discussion. A lot of AI is algorithms that have been around from the 1950s and 1960s, but being able to take advantage of those to optimize processes that are known, constrained, and can use some of these advances in technology. And then the evaluation process, when you have a system in place, getting it to critique aspects of it and really refine those points when you have a lot of constrained parameters. But getting it to do something from scratch that it has no training data set for, you're bound to lose faith in it very quickly.
Craig, from an executive lens, how do you judge whether an innovation is worth adopting across a company given the risk?
Yep, the challenge with that is weighing up the opportunity that it presents versus the risk and cost. I think the cost piece is easy to analyse. It's the risk piece that's much more difficult in terms of what's the opportunity that you've got in front of you, what's the payoff, but what can go wrong within the implementation. And there's plenty of companies who've implemented something looking at the prize because the prize looks really good, it's shiny, there's a lot of money to be made, and have underestimated the risk associated with implementing that innovation, whether that's people-based risk, whether that's product-based, whether that's revenue, quality. There's a whole lot of elements that have to go into doing a proper risk assessment, which is not a tick and flick Excel spreadsheet, is actually really breaking it down in terms of how much risk the organisation's taking on in implementing that innovation. And so I think that's the challenge. And when I look at EQ Resources now, which I've recently joined, I think one of the challenges for them as an organisation, at times they've got really good opportunities that they were a great decision in isolation, but taking on too many innovations at the same time spreads your capability and management team very thin, and then you have unforeseen risks that occur that then create a domino effect whereby really great innovations, great ideas in the implementation fall over as a result of spreading capability too thin. And then you need a circuit breaker to be able to pull everything back, get it back on track, and then implement innovation in a much more considered fashion, planned fashion, eliminating risk. And I think as an executive, the challenge is making sure you're eliminating risk and the likelihood of risk occurring as you implement innovation.
Yeah, I guess there's also a huge risk in not implementing some innovations.
Absolutely. If you don't innovate, in my opinion, you're dead. And fundamentally in the critical and strategic mineral space, when you look at China and innovation in China, it has come about not through innovating in and of itself. It's come through copying and then largely employing the 65 or 70-year-old people that have retired from Western businesses, giving them jobs in China, and then basically innovating to catch the copy up to what we're doing in the rest of the world. And the speed of adaptation and the speed of innovation that's occurring in that space is getting faster. So the gap between what we do today here and what they are capable of has been significantly reduced, and it's further rapidly closing, right? And part of that's because they turn out now so many engineers, so many process engineers, so many capable people that they can apply a lot more intelligence to a problem or a challenge than what we're able to in the West. And so we'll reach a point where they will go past us, and that's an issue.
And it's not just that's not just an innovative approach. That's they're bringing in the experts, and then the experts are training 10 or 20 or 30 engineers to become experts in that specific field.
Yes,
and that's
absolutely.
just quantum leaping, yeah.
We see that in our customer spaces. So when you look at tungsten going into different applications, in particularly tooling, we see that there's Chinese companies who've employed retirees from other Western-based companies, and they're partnering them up with 10, 15, 20 graduates as a shadow for 2 years.
Yep.
And they follow them around, and the whole purpose of that is to get intellectual property or out of the grey matter of a 65-year-old expert who's got 45 years experience into someone who's come out of university and got 3. And to fast track that 2 years is a great investment for those companies. We don't do that in the West.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the challenges we've got.
It would be nice if we could do proper knowledge transfer. It's almost sci-fi if we could start using AI to get into people's brains and transfer
Absolutely.
knowledge directly. It'll
Different
make
set of
studying a lot
opportunities.
easier as well.
Hopefully I'll be retired by that stage.
You'll retire and I'll hire you to come give me your knowledge. Sulaiman, from a finance and contracting side, do innovations and designs make projects more investable, or do finances still prefer proven low-risk designs?
Yes, regarding that, I think the innovation absolutely making increase in investability because it's improved accuracy and also the safety. Innovation must be a value-driven, not something trendy that we looking for sure. And we see great impact where innovation reduce the life cycle of cost, and also
Yes.
the carbon footprint, and also sustainability focus. All of that areas enhance the construction safety actually, and also improve asset reliability. And when innovation meet those tests, it's become financially advantage without a risk consideration or risky to take in innovation.
Yep, and safety definitely starts in the initial design.
Yes, and also we have adopted some of, if I can highlight something regarding the AI in the BMO
Yes.
activities and the scheduling. Also, it's helping a lot in the predicting what happened in the critical delay or something like that. Also, we adopt some of in our project in terms of the logistic plan during the site construction and etc. It also sometimes has feature to monitor the safety for the labor at the site. All of that help us to maintain a high standard of safety, achieving the required and more than the required from the safety hours and etc. So it's a good practice that we should consider in the design and also in the implementation for sure.
So we've got a software we're using, I'm not going to mention names now, but it also works more like a large language model on our scheduling.
Yes.
So all the projects that we do, all the studies that we do, all the schedules are put in there, and then you know exactly how long it takes to install an MCC in Saudi Arabia. Or, and then when the engineer says, this is my schedule, then we can put it against a bunch of previous projects and say, well, this doesn't look quite right, this looks too short, this looks too long, especially on the critical path items. And I think it saved us a lot of money and a lot of time.
Agreed. Also, you can't imagine it's behind that. It can tell you during the bidding also. Are you on the track or you are away from? You
Yeah.
can highlight some of items based on the historical data you upload to that AI. He can also detect you are on the budget or over the budget
Yeah.
or behind the budget.
Okay.
Yes.
No, that's great. In one phrase, each of you, one phrase, what would you define, what's the defining quality of a world-class mine design? I'll start with you, Sulaiman.
The world class for the mining, I believe, if we constrain on the site impact on the environment, for sure, it should be assured that there is no environment impact during the exploration and the mining itself cycle. Also, it will be involving the community of that mining also, and for sure, part of it to be contributing the social responsibility to find a way to reduce the impact on the environment. Yes.
Jacinta?
It's continuing to beat the drum of vision through all forms, and encouraging teams to fall in love with the problem, not just the solution.
Craig?
Yeah, look, in defining world class, the way I look at it and the way I've always looked at it is people, right? In terms of, if I'm doing a project, then I want the best people for the nature of the challenge I'm taking on, right? And I think a good team of quality people who've got experience, who've demonstrated it, have got the right capability, will resolve a world-class plan, right? In terms if there's flaws in it, be that at the inception, development, commissioning, commercial operation phase, if I've got good quality team, they'll resolve those issues, and every project is always going to have issues. There is no plan that is foolproof, and in my experience, the only way to have delivery and guaranteed delivery as an outcome is to have excellent people who are in the right structure, the right people, aligned as to outcome and doing the right things. And after that, a project can have flaws, it can potentially have serious, potential fatal flaws, but that type of team will resolve those and get that operation to work.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping it as simple as possible for the complexity of the project. It's not always easy that you can have a off-the-shelf type of build or something that's been done previously, but we see projects that have needless complexity added in at different areas in an effort to optimize a project that just didn't stack up in the way it was put together originally. So you want to have a project that's robust financially, as simple as the complexity demands to be able to make it work, and in that doing so, making sure that you've dealt with all of the subsidiary issues associated with it, the governance requirements, the environmental issues, the community around it, making sure that your design doesn't add to the problems that you will naturally encounter. As Craig was saying before, there are things that you can't foresee, but having a level of contingency in that process means that you can adapt and you've got the good people to be able to solve a problem.
Yeah. Eddy?
Yeah, I agree. I think simplicity is the one thing that sets apart a good project and a world-class project. If you rely on a lot of engineering complexity to achieve a desired outcome, in a production environment, you make thousands of decisions every day and consistently under pressure as well. So eventually you will make the wrong decision, and that can lead to an undesired outcome. So yeah, just keeping it simple and making sure it works, I think that's a world-class.
So what I get from this is people and processes, and the processes are simple and standardized. I'll tell you what I think. When I started on the mines, I believed mining was the most important aspect. But we've now moved to the critical mineral world where the mine is only designed after everything else is in place. So again, I believe it's getting your processes in place and your people in place, and you can start at the end and work your way back to get a design that's fitted for the product you're trying to produce. In that vein, Craig, how important is it to design with the full value chain in mind? I've given you the answer already. not just the mine, but the downstream process and market positioning.
It's interesting, having spent 14 years in tungsten after coming out of base metals and gold from prior part of my career, and moving into critical minerals, and tungsten, fluorspar, bismuth were three of the core products at the mine I ran. Everything starts with the customer. You're now making a niche product. You're not making a general mass-produced product that's got a defined end market with London Metal Exchange. The markets themselves are not transparent. The pricing mechanisms are opaque. In a lot of cases, your biggest competitor is the Chinese government through state-owned enterprises. And so having the market, who's your customer, what do they need, how do you build partnership with those customers so that you are, if you like, symbiotic for the product they need and what you're producing, that's where you start. And then everything else is backfilled from there. So if you like, no disrespect, but mining becomes the easy part of that process. The hard part is connecting with that customer, connecting with the market, and ensuring in a niche product in particular that you're going to be able to survive in all elements of the market. But also, if your biggest competitor is a state-owned enterprise, how do you make that work when they get aggressive? And the only way to do that is in partnership with the market. And so, based on what I've been doing for the last 14 years, I think the market's most important. Everything then is a backfill to achieving that as an outcome.
And partnerships are important, and including local community and the environment. Jacinta, ESG, it's now central to defining world-class mine designs. Is it still treated as an afterthought?
No, definitely not these days. It's definitely an umbrella statement that remains across all facets. Whilst we reconcile it as a goal to achieve, it's simply an articulation of the culture and the philosophy of an organisation that connects its teams and customers to what we are moving towards and why. Can we really consider achieving the best recovery in a mass balance as a sign of profitability? Not these days. Equally, we cannot market the greatest products without considering that. So I think at the heart, it's understanding the time, the space and environment for which we operate in, and it's no longer profit overall or safety overall, it's safe production and sustainable value to customer groups.
Richard, from a governance and investment lens, how do you judge when a project is truly world-class?
Yeah, I mean, there are some metrics that are well established. I mean, you're looking at the ore body type, looking at the capital structure, like I mentioned before, making sure that the appropriate design, the mine plan has been put in place appropriately, getting good people that are there. I mean, we don't tend to focus too heavily on the grade and tonnes associated with it, less so on some of the peripheral matters, particularly jurisdiction, country risk, looking at the ESG factors. We've all seen great deposits that have been around for decades because there are the ESG factors that have not lined up for it, particularly in the copper space. Some amazing deposits I've worked on in Mezainak in Afghanistan, Reko Diq, which is getting developed in Pakistan, but they are hugely complex tier one potential assets that only certain players will have the wherewithal and the ability to be able to develop. And I don't think there are too many ASX listed companies that would be willing to track there as a standalone project development. So that's why the capital structure, you need to have backing that's resilient to those sort of negative headlines, potential press and community and NGO issues that will follow by taking on a project like that. So yes, they might be tier one on a pure resource basis, but when you factor in the others, they do sort of fall back a little bit in whether they are a truly world-class asset.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for coming as well. I appreciate it, and DRA appreciates it. Hope everyone has a good rest of the visit.
Thank you.